In an empire, much is made of the warriors that are involved in it. However, a key part is what happens behind the scenes, the running of an empire, and that's what we're going to look at today in the context of the Emperor's Imperium. We're going to look at the Administratum. The Administratum is the largest of all the subdivisions of the Adeptus Terra. It is a gargantuan organisation whose servants include the majority of the Earth's population, as well as many millions throughout the Imperium itself. It is divided into many sub-departments and officers, each responsible for some specific aspect of imperial rule, and we'll look in depth in them after this opening section. The mere administration of the Imperial Palace, for example, is said to involve over 10 billion people. Most of the departments of the Administratum are of no real interest. They are typical bureaucratic institutions, obsessed with counting and recording petty details of stock, storage, movement and consumption. There are ranks within the Administratum. We'll go over a few of the basic ones and jump deeper into some of the more interesting ones. The head of it is the Master of the Administratum, one of the most powerful of the High Lords of Terra. The term Adeptus is given to all servants of the Emperor, whether they are high-ranking officials or lowly scribes. Next we have Prefect or Prefectus, is the title of an officer or official of the Adeptus Terra. Masters are the departmental heads of the Administratum, the individuals in charge of an entire office or division. Ordinates are minor administrative officials. Scribes are functionaries of an extremely lowly kind. They are record keepers, roughly, equivalent to a clerk. Ciphers are messengers, and they fill the corridors of the Imperial Palace as they bustle from one place to another. Ciphers are trained to memorize dictation and can repeat whole text verbatim after a single scan. They achieve this by means of self-hypnosis. The ability is a family secret passed down from parent to child. Ciphers have no knowledge of the messages they carry, but mechanically chant their information when they reach their destination. Curators are responsible for maintaining the ancient records of the Imperium, especially those preserved in the form of written ledgers. And finally, we have the two lowest roles, dubbed menials and subordinates. Menials are non-specialised workers, where subordinates have specific skills. Some are skilled craftsmen, engineers or builders. Now let's dive deeper into the sub-departments. But before we get to that, I want to talk about something interesting I came across during the making of the video. Vellum. It's the main way record keeping is done in 40k. It's called vellum parchment. This is thought to be both cheaper and more secure than data slates, but also more durable than sandpaper. Not sandpaper, I'm sorry, standard paper. This is taken from the hides of porcine, the vellum. Porcine which are bred on agri-worlds or from biovats. This need makes it a prized resource. For example, an entire family's wealth can said to be from the sale of this alone. Within the Administratum, legions of scribes work on it, each one consuming some of it. Think of Terra essentially a planet-wide hive at this point, and all the resources from the large empire it must consume. And now let me tell you that the 7th largest export to Terra in weight is vellum, so they must go through a heck of a lot of it. The first sub-organisation of the Adeptus Administratum is the Departamento Exacta, which is given the task of recovering the Exacta. What this is what civilian strategic resources a planet can have that can benefit the wider Imperium's economy. This is a tithe, and when it falls on a planet after judging its resources, it can be merciless. For example, if a world fails to meet the exact specifications of the Exacta, a world can be invaded, so these resources are taken. Another is the Officio Medica, which looks at public health and runs governmental-run medical facilities across the galaxy on the worlds of the Imperium. They're also managing, during this time, the quarantining of worlds that have been impacted, say for example when Nurgles brought something nasty to their world. Another is the Logis Strategos. This is the primary intelligence collecting arm of the Administratum. It examines threats to the Imperium and suggests categories to counteract, and this is passed on to the High Lords of Terra. Now we have the Munitorum Strategic Intelligence Collective. This secret arm is made of Ordo Xenos Inquisitors, Magos Biologists Genitors, and also Xenos Biologists of the Adept. And together they compile data on the Tyranids and try to find weaknesses they can exploit with countermeasures. The High Lords receive these reports. They are currently saying that mobilization of the Imperium must increase by 5,000 to meet the threat that the Tyranids suggest. So the Tyranids are so much of a threat to the Emperor's Imperium that it has its own department to attempt to counteract it. Keep that in mind. Next we have Planetary Census, Abhuman, which classifies and recognizes stable and, importantly, sanctions abhumans. Some of these classifications have died out, and within the organization there is disagreements among certain classifications such as Ogrins. Scribes across the Imperium will catalogue, file, copy in quadruplet and process records in vast data mills, and they might at some point be archived. These are valuable records that the Inquisition might require, and each step can take years of solar months to complete, and those who decide what are recorded where can put it where, a place that makes sense to them but perhaps not to other people, so it's not best placed for later data retrieval. So someone might ask for military aid in the wrong way. They might have their forms sent back to them. Who hasn't that happened to? And they're asked again to complete the forms correctly, but by the time that has all happened, especially if it's filed away wrongly, the planet might not even be there anymore or might be conquered. I find that idea darkly humorous, in keeping with that early tone of 40k. The Departamento Munitorum looks after the personal assignment, supply and logistics of the Astra Militarum, probably better known to most as the Imperial Guard. This part of the Administratum will raise and train new guards and also ensure they get the equipment and supplies needed in the field and off, and the transports to get there. So yes, very important logistics of war, this part. It was started during the Great Crusade. After a world was brought to compliance, the fleet would move on and take what they needed with them to continue the conquering. But fleets would, over time, be too far away from certain resources, so the Council of Terror recruited men to act as the diplomats, the mediators, the logistician. At the time, these individuals were called the Corps Logistica. Over time, this grew into the full Departamento, and its importance cannot be overstated. 3 seats of the High Lords of Terror were given to important roles within the Munitorum. Now, how is all this paid for? By tithes of troops and money and materials taken from the many worlds of the Emperor's Imperium, and bureaucrats are present on most worlds to ensure these resources are provided. The Munitorum is linked to the Adeptus on Terra when it comes to threats. Local departments can raise resources when a war zone is near. The bigger the danger, the bigger the tithe. Additional resources can also be brought in by the Departamento to meet the threat. The tithes within subsectors can impose themselves immediately, with no warning that the command is going to be coming, so fairly decentralised, but quite useful for a quick reaction. I'd just like to note that Sisters of Battle and Marines do their own logistics. One of my favourite departments is the Historical Revision Unit. Their human servants and servitors, under the title of Historitors, work with the palace to revise records for imperial history. Enduring records over time can be amended so that all the records are reverent towards the empire. An important duty within this department are the deletion teams, who when asked find and destroy records of history. This is called the Edict of Obliteration and is applied to any records related to a single person or organisation who has been declared excommunicate traitoris by the Master of Mankind's followers. I would love a short story on this deletion team, just to see what they get up to and what damage they do, removing history, removing things that might be important to learn. The High Lords of Terror, or the Cuddly Inquisition, most of these are done in the Librarium Terra, whose records go back many thousands of years. This library is hard to reach and is deep beneath Terra's crust. 10 adepts and an officer will make up the team, and they wear rebreathers as a lot of dust can gather in the unused parts of the librarium. Flamers and a silent autogun are present for any scholar who might come across the team if they are very unlucky. This data can be on scrolls, data info slates, parchment, etc. But once located, the captain signals for the flamers, creating a furnace, and so much knowledge in the galaxy is lost in a second. I'm surprised it doesn't burn down the whole place myself, like the Library of Alexandria back in real Earth's history. A more recent addition to the Administratum is the Logos Historica Verita, which is a lot of fun to say, like many 40k words. This seeks to record history without religious, superstitious bias. This was brought to life by Rabute, of course, because I imagine most things are recorded by the religious bias. And this idea seems to almost run counter to the deletion team, so there might be a little clash there between the running of the Imperium and what Rabute wants from the Imperium. Rabute wanted to use this record, if something accurate could be put together, to help mankind advance from the darkness. Those given this task are inquisitive and more open to ideas than others within the Imperium, and they must uncover, collate and record history, and hope they don't run into a deletion team by all accounts. Thousands of years lost to time or recorded wrongly is what they're trying to put back together. A lot of this was lost in the time after the heresy. I'm told there's approximately 500 of them at the moment, a very small amount if you think of the size of the 40k galaxy. They dare danger, treading near war zones for what was once known by most. And again, I'd love to see a short story on something like that. And I'm sure some wheels within the Imperium try to oppose them, perhaps even the members of the Inquisition. So you see the issue that the Imperium has, how they record things, how things are lost, how things are changed. None of these are going to help mankind fight the Xenos that surround it on every side. But it's a very interesting insight into how it actually works. And on that note, friends, I'll wrap up today's video. Love to hear your thoughts on some of these organisations. Would you like to see a short story on the deletion teams? Is there a department that I skimmed over that you'd like to hear some more details on? I'm open to suggestions. Drop me a comment down below. Thank you.